The Lancashire Witches, Book of the First, Alison Device, Chapter 2, Black Cat and the White Dove. Little Janet, watching her sister's triumphant departure with a look in which there was far more of envy than sympathy, when it offered her hand to lead her forth, saying she did not care for any side by side, went back to one way to the inner room. When there, however, she could not help keeping through the window, and so going to revel while hearing. I wish you would bring a spoiled day finally, sitting down on a stool, cooking the flowers in the basket, and yet why am I enjoying seems like Paul, who is and never hardly or say, continued after all that grandmother then died in the witch and honestly all she believed. I wonder if she made Alison so nah, that kind of before Alison's favourite of her, she loved anyone. Why didn't she make then say it's simple to be a gift or Alvin's grandmother then died before I observe that door for cause her which are engraved on her so it can be purified from them or as she does the great black cat belonging to her mother which followed her into the room rubbed himself against her putting her feet back and turning louder. I did, said the little girl, how are you? I did not know you were here. Let me ask you questions. The cat nibbled and fixed his great yellow eyes on her. You wanted me to understand what was said to you and to see what you say to this. Shall I ever be pleased on lies, Sister Alice? The cat moved in a manner that the little girl found because into why. How that replied on the daughter. If a thought is meant to head in here, Sarah, and question Alice. This time the cat daughter was holding all at once the cat bounded upon the swing board over which the place of Sampler with the name Alison. Why did she really seem to understand the prayer of the Janet? People like asking the question if I said she had regarded the family and now turned against her and more kitty cat and this kid sweeted to the girl fortunately. What's more that cat again dashed twice or right, muddy round the room and then stopped at a half rang over the chimney, not frightened you away at any rate, observed Janet laughing, and yet it made she added, reflecting a little, but I heard see as how wishes fly up chimneys and broomsticks to attend their Sabbath. I should like fly in that manner and change myself on the shape of my own. All that I believe as pretty as Alison, I don't know what I am not doing to be like her. Again the great black cat was beside her, moving against her, and her and child was a good deal startled, for she had not seen him turn, and the door was shut, though he might have come in through the open window, only she had been looking that way the whole time, and had never noticed him. Strange tips of child, asking thou hast not answered my question, how did one come away? As she made this inquiry, the cat scratched her in the arm, so that the little girl was to be frightened as well as her, and drawing her arm quickly, made a motion frighteningly, but starting back and projecting his tail, the cat assumed such a formidable appearance as she did not dare to touch him, and she then perceived that some drop of blood stained her white sleeve, giving spots a certain resemblance to Lancashire and the at this moment, when she was about to scream for help, though she knew no one was in the house, all having gone away with the Mayday revelry, a small white dove flew in at the open window and skimming round the room, alighted near her. No sooner had the cat caught sight of this beautiful bird than instead of preparing to pounce on it as might have been expected, instantly abandoned, she was actually uttering a sort of howl, rang up the chimney and brought the child, scarcely observed its attention being directed towards the bird. Extremely delighted her, he seemed quite tame and allowed himself to touch her, become drawn towards her without an effort to say, never surely will see so beautiful a bird with such white feathers, such red legs and such pretty yellow eyes and some circles round them. So thought the little girl as she gazed at it and pressed it to her bottom, doing the gentleness of the board came upon her, and she reflected what a nice lady this pretty bird would make her sister. Alison on her return from the merry-making, albeit she refused to give it to her, and then she thought of Alison constant kindness, afterwards herself for all terms, wondering if she could again feel the memory towards one so good and amiable, all this while the dove nested in her bottom. While thus pondering, the little the girl felt an unaccountable drowsiness steal over her and presently having dropped asleep when she had a very strange dream. It seemed to her that there was a contest going on between two spirits, a good one and a bad. The bad one being represented by the great black cat and the good fairy by the white dog. What they were striving about she could not exactly tell, but she felt that the conflict had some relation to herself. It does at first appear to have a poor chance against Lord of his sable adversary, but the sharp talons of the latter made no impression upon the white plumage of the bird, which now shone like silver armour, and in the end the cat fled, yelling as he darted off. Thou art victorious now, but her soul shall yet mine. Something awakened those asleep at the same moment, and she felt very much terrified at the dream, as she could not help thinking her own soul might be the one in jeopardy, and her first impulse was to see whether the white dove was safe. Yes, there it was, still nestling in her bosom with its head in the swing. Just then she was startled at hearing her own name pronounced by a hoarse voice, and looking up she beheld a tall young man standing at the window. He had a somewhat gypsy look, having a dark olive complexion, fine black eyes, though set strangely in his head like those of Janet and her mother, coal black hair and very prominent features of a sullen and almost savage cast. His figure was long but very muscular, his arms seemed extremely long and his hands unusually large and bony. Personal advantages which made him a formidable antagonist in any rustic encounter, and in such he was frequently engaged. Being of a very irascible temper and turbulent disposition, he was clad in a holiday suit of dark green serge which fitted him well, and carried a nosegay in one hand and a stout blackthorn cudgel in the other. This young man was James Device, son of Elizabeth, and some 4 or 5 years older than Alison. He did not live with his mother in Worley, but in Pendle Forest, near his old relative Mother Denby, and had come over that morning to attend the wake. What are you about, Janet? Inquired James Device in tones naturally hoarse and deep, and which he took as little pains to soften as he did to polish his manners, which more than ordinary were rude and churlish. What are you about, I say, wench? He repeated. Why don't you go out green to see the Morris dancers? Put it round to Maypole. Come along with me. I don't know want to go, Jen, replied the little girl. Oh, you shan't go, I tell ye, joined her brother. Ye shan't see your dance. Ye can't sit warm on a day, or a day only once a year, and Alison would be queen twice in her life, so come along with me directly or I'll make it. I should like to see Alison dance, and so I won't go with you, Jen, replied Janet, getting otherwise your orders shouldn't make me, sir, I can tell you. As she came out, she found her brother whistling the blithe air of Green Sleeves, putting strange capers in imitation of the Morris dancers, and whirling his cudgel over his head instead of the cheek. The gaiety of day seemed infectious, and to have seized over him. People start to see Black Jem, or Surly Jem, as he was indifferently called, so joyous, and wondered what it could mean. He then fell to singing a snatch of a local ballad, at that time in vogue in the neighbourhood. If thou would not my secret tell, no brute abroad I wholly perish, and swear to keep my counsel well, I win declare my day of marriage. Come along, lass, he cried, sobbing suddenly in his song, and snatching his sister's hand. What hand? Get him there, lass, up your kirtle hair. A white dove, replied Janet, determined not to tell him anything about her strange dream. A white dove, echoed Jem, give it me, and I'll wring its neck and get it roasted as swear. I shall not do such thing, Jem, replied Janet, I mean get it to Alison. Well, that's great, rejoined Jem blandly. It'll make a pretty offering. Let's look at it. Nah, said Janet, pressing the bird gently to her bosom. No one shan't see it before Alison. Come along then, cried Jem, rather testily, and mended his pace, or Westy too late for the round. Well, you scratted yourself, ye aided, noticing the red spots on her sleeve. Have you? She rejoiced evasively. Oh, now a killer it was. Tip, did it? Tip, echoed Jem bravely, and glancing uneasily at the marks. Meanwhile, on quitting the cottage, the May-Day revellers had proceeded slowly towards the green, increasing the numbers of their followers at each little tenement they passed, and being welcomed everywhere with shouts and cheers. The hobby horse cavorted and capered, the fool fleered at the girls and flaunted the men, jesting with everyone, and when failing in a point, rapping the knuckles of his auditors. Friar chucked the pretty girls under the chin in defiance of their sweethearts, and stole a kiss from every buxom dame that stood in his way, and then snapped his fingers or made a broad grimace at Ozen. The piper played, and the tabourer rattled his tambourine. The Morris dancers tossed their kerchiefs aloft, and the bells of the rush carts jingled merrily. The men on the top being on a level with the roofs of cottages, and the summits of the haystacks stayed past, but in spite of their exalted position, jesting with the crowd below. The volley train had just reached the precincts of the green when the usher, waving his wand aloft, called a momentary halt, announcing that Sir Ralph Assheton and the gentry were coming forth from the Abbey gate. Chapter 3. That Assheton. Between Sir Ralph Assheton of the Abbey and the inhabitants of Warley, many of whom were his tenants, he being joint lord of manor with John Bradle of Horsfield, the best possible feelings subsisted. For those somewhat associating manner and tincture with Puritanism, the worthy knight was sufficiently shrewd, or more correct speaking, sufficiently little-minded to be tolerant of the opinions of others, and being moreover sincere in his own religious views, no man called in question for them, besides which he was very hospitable to his friends, very bountiful to the poor, a good landlord, and a humane man. Though so young, Sir Ralph was prematurely great, and this, combined with the sad severity of his asset, gave him the air of one considerably past the middle terms of life. Though this feelings were contradicted again by the youthful fire of his evil eyes, his features were handsome, strongly marked, and he wore a pointed beard and moustaches with a shaved cheek. Sir Ralph Assheton had married twice, his first wife being the daughter of Sir James Bellingham of Cleveland in Northumberland, by whom he had children, while his second choice fell on Elizabeth, who was a lovely and well-endowed heiress of Bordeaux, to whom he had recently united. In his attire, even when habited for chase or a merry-making like present, the Knight of Warley affected a sombre colour and ordinarily more appealed to the look of black silk immense symbols on its interior, stiffened with whalebone puff out well wider sleeves, falling bands for the eschewable as savoury of vanity, boots of white flexible leather ascending to the laws, and armed with spurs with gigantic rowels, a round small brim black hat, and an ostrich feather placed in the side hanging over the top, a long rapier on his hip, and a dagger in his girdle. This buckram attire, it will be easily conceived, contributed no little to the natural stiffness of this tall figure. Sir Ralph Assheton was great-grandson of Richard Assheton, who flourished in the time of Abbot Haslar, and who, in conjunction with John Bradle, 14 years after the unfortunate prelate's attainder and the dissolution of the monastery, had purchased the abbey and domains of Warley from the crown, subsequently to which a division of the property so granted took place between them, and abbey and part of the manor falling to the share of Richard Assheton, whose descendants had now for 3 generations made it their residence. Thus the whole of Warley belonged to the families of Assheton and Bradle, which had intermarried, the latter, as has been stated, dwelling at Portfield, a fine old seat in the neighbourhood. A very different person from Sir Ralph was his cousin Nicholas Assheton of Downham, who, except as regards his Puritanism, might be considered a type of the Lancashire squire of the day. Precision in religious notions and constant in attendance at church and lecture, he put no sort of restraint upon himself, but mixed up fox hunting, otter hunting, shooting at the mark, and perhaps shooting with a longbow, foot racing, horse racing, and in fact every other kind of country diversion, not forgetting tippling, cards and dicing, with daily devotion, discourses, and psalm singing in the oddest way imaginable. A good-looking young man was the Squire of Downham, possessed of a very athletic frame and most vigorous constitution, which helped him, together with the prodigious exercise he took, through any excess. He had a sanguine complexion with a broad, good-natured visage, which he could lengthen at will in a surprising manner. His hair was cropped close to his head, and the razor did daily duty over his cheek and chin, giving him the roundhead look. Some years later, characteristic of the puritanical party, Nicholas had taken to wife Dorothy, daughter of Richard, 3 acres of Worston, and was most fortunate in his choice, which in more than can be said for his lady, for I cannot hold the squire as a model of conjugal fidelity. Report affirmed that he loved more than one pretty girl under the rose. A third cousin of Sir Ralph saw in the second degree. Likewise present on the May Day in question was the Reverend Abdias Assheton, rector of Middleton, a very worthy man who, though differing from his kinsmen on some religious points and not altogether approving of the conduct of one of them, was on good terms with both. The rector of Middleton was portly and middle-aged, fond of ease and reading, and by no means indifferent to the good things of life. He was unmarried and passed much of his time at Middleton Hall, the seat of the near relative of Sir Richard Assheton, to whose family he was greatly attached and whose residence closely adjoined the rectory. A fourth cousin also present was young Richard Assheton of Middleton, eldest son and heir of the owner of that estate, possessed of all the good qualities largely distributed amongst the king's men. With none of their drawbacks, this young man was as tolerant and bountiful as Sir Ralph without his austerity and sectarianism, as keen a sportsman and as bold a rider as Nicholas without his propensities to excess, as studious at times and as well read as Abdias without his laziness and self-indulgence, and as courtly and well-bred as his father, Sir Richard, who was esteemed one of the most perfect gentlemen in the country without his haughtiness. Then he was the handsomest of his race, though the Asshetons were counted the handsomest family in Lancashire, and no one minded yielding the psalm to young Richard, even if it could be contested. He was so modest and unassuming. At this time, Richard Assheton was about 22 tall, gracefully and slightly formed, but possessed of much remarkable vigour that even his cousin Nicholas could scarcely compete with him in athletic exercises. His features were fine and regular, with an almost Phrygian precision of outline. His hair was of a dark brown and fell in glistering curls over his brow and neck, and his complexion was fresh and blooming, set off by a slight beard and moustache carefully trimmed and pointed. His dress consisted of a dark green doublet with wide velvet hose embroidered and fringe descending nearly to the knee, where they were tied with points and ribbons met by dark stockings and terminated by red velvet shoes with roses in them. A white feather adorned his black broad-leaved hat, and he had a rapier by his side. Amongst Sir Ralph Assheton's guests were Richard Nick of Worston, Nicholas Assheton's father-in-law, Richard Sherborne of Dunno, near Sladen, and who married Dorothy, Nicholas's sister, Mistress Robinson of Raydale House, and to the knight and the squire and two of her sons, both stout youths, with John Bradle and his wife of Orfield. Beside these were Master Roger Norwell, a justice of the peace in the county, and a very active and busy one too, who had been invited for an special purpose to be explained hereafter. Head of an ancient Lancashire family residing at Reed, a fine old hall some little distance from Warley. Roger Norwell, though a worthy, well-meaning man, dealt hard measure from the bench and seldom tempered justice with mercy. He was sharp-featured, dry and sarcastic, and being adverse to country sports, his presence on the occasion was the only thing likely to impose restraint on the revellers. Other guests there were, but none of the particular note. The ladies of the party consisted of Lady Assheton, Mistress Nicholas Assheton of Downham, Dorothy Assheton of Middleton, sister to Richard, a lovely girl of 18 with light fleecy hair, summer blue eyes, and a complexion of exquisite purity, Mistress Sherborne of Dunno, Mistress Robinson of Raydale, and Mistress Bradle of Orfield, before mentioned, together with the wives and daughters of some others of the neighbouring gentry, most noticeable amongst whom was Mistress Alice Nutter of Roughly in Pendle Forest, a widow lady and a relative of the Assheton family. Mistress Nutter might be a year or two turned 40, but she still retained a very fine vigour and much beauty of feature, though of a cold and disagreeable cast. She was dressed in mourning, though her husband had been dead several years, and her rich dark habiliments well became her pale complexion and raven hair. A proud poor gentleman was Richard Nutter, her late husband, and his scanty means not enabling him to keep up as large an establishment as he desired, or to be as hospitable as his nature prompted. His temper became soured, and he visited his ill humours upon his wife, who, devotedly attached to him to all outward appearances at least, never resented his ill treatment. All at once, and without any previous symptom of ailment or apparent cause, unless it might be over fatiguing hunting the day before, Richard Nutter was seized with a strange and violent illness, which, after 3 or 4 days of acute suffering, brought him to the grave. During his illness, he was constantly and zealously tended by his wife, but he displayed great aversion to her, declaring himself bewitched, and that an old woman was ever in the corner of his room, mumbling wicked enchantments against him. But as no such old woman could be seen, these assertions were treated as delirious ravings. They were not, however, forgotten after his death, and some people said that he had certainly been bewitched, and that a waxen image made in his likeness and supple of pins had been picked up in his chamber by Mistress Alice and cast into the fire, and as soon as it melted he had expired. Such tales only obtained credence with the common folk, as Pendle Forest was a sort of weird region, many reputed witches dwelling in it. They were the more readily believed even by those who acquitted Mistress Nutter of all share in the dark transaction. Mistress Nutter gave the best proof that she respected her husband's memory by not marrying again, and she continued to lead a very secluded life at roughly a lonesome house in the heart of the forest. She lived quite by herself, for she had no children, her only daughter having perished somewhat strangely when quite an infant. So a relative of the Ashtons, she kept little intimacy with them, and it was a matter of surprise to all that she had been drawn from her seclusion to attend the present revel. Her mother, however, in visiting the abbey, was to obtain the assistance of Sir Ralph Assheton in settling a dispute between her and Rogue Norwell, relative of the boundary line of part of their properties which came together, and this was the reason why the magistrate had been invited to Warley. After hearing both sides of the question and examining plans of the estate which he knew to be accurate, Sir Ralph, who had been appointed umpire, pronounced a decision in favour of Roger Norwell, but Mistress Nutter, refusing to abide by a settlement of the matter, was postponed till the day but one following, between which time the landmarks were being investigated by a certain lawyer named Potts, who attended on behalf of Roger Norwell, together with Nicholas and Richard Ashton on behalf of Mistress Nutter. Upon their evidence, it was agreed by both parties that Sir Ralph should announce a final decision to be accepted by them, and to that effect they signed an agreement. The three persons appointed to the investigation settled to start for roughly early on the following morning. A word as to Master Thomas Potts. This worthy was an attorney from London who had officiated as clerk of the court at the assizes at Lancaster, where his witness had so much pleased Roger Norwell that he sent for him to read to manage this particular business. A sharp-witted fellow was Potts, and versed in all the quirks and tricks of a very subtle profession, not over scrupulous, provided the client would pay well, prepared to resort to any expedient to gain his object, and quite conversant enough with both practice and precedent to keep himself straight. A bustling, consequential little personage was he, moreover very fond of delivering an opinion, even when unasked, and of a meddling, make mischief turn, constantly settle men by their ears. A suit of rusty black, a parchment-coloured skin, small wizened features, paternal nose, scant eyebrows, and a great yellow forehead constituted its external man. He cut off the hospitality at Abbey, but at the quarters at Dragon he it was who counselled Roger Norwell to abide by the decision of Sir Ralph, confidently assuring him that he must carry his point. This dispute was not, however, the only one the knight had to adjust, or in which Master Potts was concerned. Claim had recently been made by a Captain Sir Thomas Metcalfe of Napier in Wensleydale near Bainbridge to the house and manor of Greydale, belonging to his neighbour John Robinson, whose lady, as has been shown, was a relative of the Ashtons. Robinson himself had gone to London to obtain advice on the subject, while Sir Thomas Metcalfe, who was a man of violent disposition, had threatened to take forcible possession of Greydale if it were not delivered to him without delay, and to eject the Robinson family. Having consulted Potts, however, on the subject, whom he had met at Reed, the latter strongly dissuaded him from the course. They recommended him to call to his aid and strong arm of the law, but this he rejected, though he ultimately agreed to refer the matter to Sir Ralph Assheton. For this purpose he had come to Warley, and was at present a guest at the vicarage. Thus it will be seen that Sir Ralph Assheton had his hands full, while the little London lawyer, Master Potts, was tolerably well occupied. Besides Sir Thomas Metcalfe, Sir Richard Molyneux, and Mr. Parker of Romsthorne, guests of Dr. Ormerod at the vicarage. Such was the large company assembled to witness the May Day revels at Warley, and if harmonious feelings did not exist amongst all of them, little outward manifestation was made of enmity. The dresses and appointments of the pageant having been provided by Sir Ralph Assheton, who, Puritan as he was, encouraged all harmless country pastimes, it was deemed necessary to pay him every respect, even if no other feeling would have prompted the attention, and therefore troops had stopped on seeing him and his guests issue from the Abbey gate. At pretty nearly the same time, Dr. Ormerod and his party came from the vicarage towards the green. No order of march was observed, but Sir Ralph and his lady, with two of his children by the form of marriage, were first. Then came some of the other ladies, with the rector of Middleton, John Bradle, and the two sons of Mistress Robinson. Next came Mistress Nutter, Roger Norwell, and Potts walking after her, eyeing her maliciously as a proud figure swept on before them. Even if she saw their looks or overheard their jeers, she did not deign to notice them. Lastly came young Richard Ashton of Middleton, and Squire Nicholas, both in high spirits and laughing and chatting together. A brave day for the Morrisances, cousin Dick, observed Nicholas Ashton as they approached the green, and plenty of all to witness this sport. Half my lads from Downham are here, and I see a good many of your Middleton chaps among them. How are you, Farmer Tetlow? He added to a stout, pale-looking man with a blooming countrywoman by his side. Approach your pretty young wife to the rush bearing, I see. Yes, Squire, rejoined the farmer, and mighty pleased pleased to be too. Happy to hear it, Master Tetlaw, replied Nicholas. She'll be better pleased before the day's over, I'll warrant her. I'll dance around with her myself in the hall at night. There now, Meg, who done ye may the squire a courtesy wench and thank him, said Tetlaw, nudging his pretty wife, who returned away, rather embarrassed by the fleeing gaze of the squire. Nicholas, however, did not wait for the courtesy, but went away laughing to overtake Richard Ashton, who had walked on. Ah, here's Frank Arside, he continued, sighing another rusty acquaintance. Hello, Frank, I'll come over one day next week and try for a box in Easington Woods. We missed the last, you know. Son Brockham, are you there? Just ridden over from Sladen. When is that shooting match at Bodden tomorrow? Mind it is to be at 22 the distance. Ride over to Downham on Thursday next on. We're to have a foot race and I'll show you the sport. And at night we'll have a lusty drinking bout at a ale house. On Friday we'll take out the great nets and try for salmon in the Ribble. I took some fine fish on Monday. One salmon of £10 weight, the largest I've got all season. I brought it with me today to the Abbey. There's an otter in the river and I won't hunt him till you've gone. Tom, I shall see you on Thursday. Receiving an answer in the affirmative, Squire Nicholas walked on, nodding right and left, jesting with the farmers and ogling their wives and daughters. I'll tell you what, Dicky said, calling after Richard Ashton, who had got in advance of him. I'll match my gun knife against your grey gelding, but when pieces that I reach the boundary line of the roughly land for you tomorrow. What you won't have it, you know I shall beat you. Haha, well, we'll try the speed of the two tits the first day we hunt the stag in Ball and Boris. Odds my life, he cried, suddenly altering his deportment and lengthening the visage. If there isn't our parson here, stay with me, cousin Dick, stay with me. Give you good day, worthy Mr. Dewars, he added, taking off his hat to the divine, who respectfully returned his salutation. I did not look to see your reverence here taking part in these vanities and idle thoughts. I paused to call on you on Saturday and passed an hour in serious discourse. I would call tomorrow, but I have to ride over to Pendle on business. Tarry a moment for me, I pray you, cousin Richard. I fear, reverend sir, that you will see much here that will scandalise you, much lightness and indecorum. Pleasanter far would it be to me to see a large congregation of the elders flocking together to a garden meeting than crowds assembled for such a profane purpose. Another moment, Richard, my cousin, is a young man, Mr. Dewhurst, and wishes to join the revel, but we must make allowances, worthy and reverend sir, until the world shall improve. An excellent discourse gave us a sir on Sunday, Romans 8, 12 and 13 verses. It is graven on my memory, but I have made a note of it in my diary. I come to you, cousin, I pray you walk on to the Abbey with Mr. Dewhurst, where you will be right welcome, and call for any refreshment you may desire. A glass of good sack and a slice of venison pasty on which we have designed, and there is some famous old ale which I recommend to you, that I know you care not any more than myself, which under farewell, reverend sir, I will join you ere long, for these seems of little attraction to me, but I must take care that my young cousin Paul is not into harm. And as the divine took his way to the Abbey, he added laughingly to Richard, a good riddance if I would not have the old fellow lay the fire on us. Giles Mercer, he added, stopping again, and Jefferson, well met lads, what are you come to the way? I shall be at John Mole's in the evening, and we'll have a glass together. John Broom sat rarely, and Sarah from the edge. Both would be at the dancing at the Abbey square, said one of the farmers. Curse the dancing, cried Nicholas. I hope Parson didn't hear me, he added, turning round quickly. Well, I'll come down when the dancing is over, and we'll make a night of it. And he ran on to overtake Richard Ashton. By this time, the respective parties from the Abbey and the vicarage having united, they walked on together. Sir Ralph Ashton, after courteously exchanging salutations with Dr. Ormond, yes, still keeping a little in advance of the company. Sir Thomas Metcalfe comported himself with more than his wonted haughtiness, and bowed so superciliously to Mistress Robinson that her two sons glanced angrily at each other, as if in doubt whether they should not instantly present their affront. Observing this, as well as what had previously taken place, Nicholas Ashton stepped quickly up to them and said, "Keep quiet, lads, leave this Thornhill cot to me, and I'll lower his crest." With this, he pushed forward and elbowing Sir Thomas rudely out of the way, turning round, and instead of apologising, eyed him coolly and contemptuously from head to foot, and said, "Are you drunk, sir, that you've got your manners?" laying his hands upon his sword. "Not so drunk that I know how to conduct myself like a gentleman, Sir Thomas," rejoined Nicholas, "which is more than can be said for a certain person of my acquaintance who, for aught I know, has only taken his morning pint. You wish to pick a quarrel with me, Master Nicholas Ashton, I see," said Sir Thomas, stepping closer to him, "and I will not disappoint you. You shall render me good reason for this from before I leave Warwick." "When and where you please, Sir Thomas," rejoined Nicholas, laughing at any point and at any weapon I am no man. At this moment my thoughts had centered a quarrel far and who would have lighted well enough if his caution had not run down to his own interest. Little Roger Norwell and ran back to my car and picking him by the sleeve said in a low voice, "This is not the way to obtain quiet possession of Radio House, Sir Thomas. Master Mills Aston," he added very to him, "I must entreat you, my good sir, to be moderate. Gentlemen, for I caution you that I have my eye upon you. You well know there is a magistrate here, my singular good friend and honoured client, Master Roger Norwell, and if you choose this followed over, I shall hold my duty to have bound over by that word, gentlemen, to censure his peace towards our sovereign lord king and all his lieges, and particularly towards simple right understanding gentlemen." "Perfectly," replied Nicholas. "I drink as on was tonight, Sir Thomas." So saying, he walked away. Metcalfe would have followed him, but was withheld by Cough. "Let him go, Sir Thomas," said old man of war. "Let him go once, Master of Radio. You can do as you please. Leave the settlement of the matter to me. I'll just whisper a word, Sir Val Ashton's ear, and you'll hear no more of it." Fire and fury growled Sir Thomas. "I like not this mode of setting a quarrel, and unless this hot-headed psalm and apologises, I shall assure you customers for all yours, Sir Thomas rejoined, "but better sitting Graydale Hall than lies that involve. Well, we'll see over the matter." My thoughts lied at night. A nice morning's work I made of it in his voice as he walked along. "Here I have a dancing farmer's rate wine, a dissolving person, a drinking bout with a couple of clowns, and a yellow with a blistering night on my hand, fighting no on my conscience, but I must get through it the best way I can. And now, pay for the Maple and the Morris Nancy." Nicholas resolved in time to begin his presentation of the remaining to Sir Ralph Ashton and his lady, and like everyone else he was greatly survived that she used his natural grace. A little ceremony was thus conducted when even the Abbey drew near the group of revelries, Usher taking Alison's hand in the tips of his fingers as was strutted forward with her to Sir Ralph and his lady, and falling upon one knee before them said, "Most worshipful and honourable knights, and you, his lovely dame, and you, tender and cherished olive branches growing round about their table, I hereby crave your gracious mission to send unto your honours our chosen Queen of May." Somewhat fluttered by the presentation, Alison yet maintained sufficient composure to bend gracefully before Lady Ashton and say in a very sweet voice, "I fear your ladyship will think the choice of the village have fallen ill in alighting upon me, and indeed I feel myself whatever unworthy the distinction. Nevertheless I will endeavour to discharge my office fittingly, and therefore pray you, fair lady, and the worshipful knight, children, together with your beauteous children, and the gentles all by whom you are surrounded, to grace our little festival with your presence, so you may find as much pleasure in the sight as we shall do in offering it to you. Fair maid and modest as she is fair," observed Sir Ralph with a condescending smile. Replied Lady Ashton, raising her kindly and saying as she did so, "Nay, you must not kneel to us, she may be Queen of May, and it is for us for respecting you during your day of suffering, that your wishes are commanded, and we are commands to imagine. Now, guess I answer that you gladly attend your revels of the Queen." "Well said here now," observed Sir Ralph, "it should be sure is indeed well with me bidding of so real. Nay, you have all the roses in earnest to receive now, Sir Ralph," observed Lady Ashton, smiling. "On fairly continued, tell your companions to begin their swords when they leave, only remembering this, that we shall hope to see all your gifts this evening at our military marina, where I will strive find your military as to partner," added Sir Ralph. "Say she shall make her choice now as a loyal person should, but you know now in all her choosing a partner, whether we be born or abroad. How say you, fair one, shall we either of our or will Robinson of Lady, or I was in the children himself, or flying yourself down, and I let it be me, I implore of you, fair lady, before yours. He is engaged already, observed to Ashton forward. I heard him masters and Mrs. Petlow, Bob's wife, dancing in the evening at Abbey, a loud laugh going around Bob Lawrence, information, English voice of his wife. This uncertain Dick would have choose him, and that is why he interferes with me, he observed. "How say you, fair queen, shall he, our hopeful cousin?" I will answer him that he answered the Coranto and the Volta indifferently well. On hearing Mrs. Ashton's voice, all the word exceeding Alison, but I decided to yield her by news return with additional horse, and the king did not escape the eye of Lady Ashton. Let's her she said, not a wit Eleanor answered the squire, but if she like not Ashton, there is another Lady Sherborne or Sladen or Alison Jack Raddle, or if she prefers an older and retreating my day, father ruminated of Warsaw, or Master Roger Norwood of Lee Plenty of Choice. Nay, by my partner it shall be a young one, said Alison. Right, Fagin, cried Wolf, laughing. Ever as you is a young man, you can, you have named him yourself, sir, cried Alison, in a voice which she endeavoured to learn, but with inside a roll of echo sound which much asleep, and Sir Richard Ashton, next to choosing me, could not have chosen better of those persuading the late man. I congratulate myself by the young man begging. He added, I fancy, highly flattered am I by your choice, and shall be demean myself, I shall as to prove myself worthy of it. Before I go, I will beg a boon from you, that flower. This thing, cried Alison, it is yours, fair sir. Young Ashton took the flower and took the hand that offered it at the same time, and pressed the latter to his lips, while Lady Ashton, who had been made a little uneasy by Alison's apparent emotion, and who with true feminine tact immediately detected its cause, called out, now forward to the Maypole. We have interrupted the revel too long. Open this, the May Queen stepped blushingly back with the usher, who with his white wand in hand had stood bolt upright behind her, immensely delighted with the scene in which his beautiful Alison had been tutored by him for the occasion had taken part. Sir Ralph then clapped his hands loudly, and at this signal the tabor and pipe shrill, and the fool and the hobby horse, who though idle all the time and indulged in a little quiet fun with the rustics, recommended their gambols. The Morris dancers their lively dance, and the whole train moved towards the Maypole, followed by the brush cart with all its bells jingles and all its garlands waving. As to Alison, her brain was in a whirl, and her bosom heaved so bigly that she thought she would faint to think that the choice of partner in the dance at the Abbey had been offered her, and that she should venture to choose Master Richard Ashton. She could scarcely credit her own temerity, and then to think that she should give him a flower, and more than all, that he should kiss her hand in return for it. She felt tinkling pressure of his lips on her fingers still, and her little heart palpitated strangely. As she approached the Maypole, and the truth again halted for a few minutes, she saw her brother James holding Miss Janet by the hand, standing in front line to look at her. Oh, how I am glad to see you here, Janet, she cried. I am glad to see you, your Alison, glad little girl. Janet told me what her grandfather to had this on, and she added with playful malice, who was wrong none. She said the Queen could choose Master Richard, and her Janet, not a word more, interrupted Alison, blushing. Oh, it doesn't mean to vex you, I'm sure, replied Janet. Got a present for me, Janet, cried Alison. What is it? Beautiful white lad girl. Where did you get it? Let me see it, cried Alison in a breath. Here it is, replied Janet, opening her curtain. A beautiful bird indeed, cried Alison. Take care of it for me till I come home. Which winner be till late, fancy, rejoined Janet roguishly. Ah, she added, between a cry. The latter exclamation was occasioned by the sunlight door which escaping from her hole so locked. Janet followed close of its silver wings as they cleaved the blue sky, and then all at once saw a large hawk which apparently had been hovering about, swat down upon it and bear it off. Some white feathers fell down near the little girl, and she picked up one of them and put it in her breast. Poor bird, exclaimed the May Queen. Hey, poor bird, echoed Janet Taylor. Hey, you don't know how Alison wheeled, there's no use whimpering about it, observed young Rutler. Hey, ring ye another first time, goes count. There's not another bird like that, sodded the girl. Shoot that cruel hole from me, Jem, will ye? How can he wench when he's flown away? Replied, oh, rob a horse nest for you, that'll do as well. You don't understand me, Jem, replied Giles sadly. At this moment, the music, which had ceased while some arrangements were made, commenced a very lively tune known as Round the Maypole, and Robin Hood, taking the May Queen's hand, led her to the hall, and placed her near it. The whole of her attendants took hands, while a second circle was formed by the Morris dancers, and both began to wheel rapidly around her. The music momentarily increased in seriousness, and irresistible desire joined in the measures seized some of the lads and lasses round the day. Likewise the hands, and presently a furnace of wider circles on wheeling, gathering round the two. The dancers were formed here and there, and presently the whole room was in movement. If you come off hard all tonight, I shall be surprised, observed Nicholas, who with his young relative had approached as near the Maypole as three round dancers would allow them. Richard Ashton made no reply, glanced at the pink which he had placed in his doublet. Who is the May Queen? Inquired Sir Thomas Metcalfe, who had likewise drawn near, of a tall man holding a little girl by the hand. Alison, daughter of Elizabeth Device, and May's sister, replied James Device. Muttered Sir Thomas, she is a well-looking lass, and she dwells here in Whalley Fellow, he added. Who dwells Whalley? Responded James sullenly. I can easily find her aboard, muttered the knight, walking away. What was it, Sir Thomas, said you, Jem? Inquired Nicholas, who had watched the knight's gestures summing up. Jem related what had passed between them. What the devil does he want with her? Cried Nicholas. No good, I'm sure, but I'll spoil his sword, save all the words, Squire, and I'll break every bone I his body, remarked Jem. No, Jem, replied Nicholas. Take care of your pretty sister, and I'll take care of him. At this juncture, Sir Thomas, who inspired the efforts of the Pacific Master Plots to tranquilise him, and being burning with wrath at the affront he had received from Nicholas, came up to Richard Ashton, and noticing pink in his blossom, snatched it away suddenly. I want flower, he said, smelling at it. Instantly restore it, Sir Thomas cried, Ashton pale with rage. Oh, what will you do, Sir? Rejoined the knight, haltingly. Looking at the flower pieces, you can get another from the fair knight who gave you this. Further speech was not allowed the night, for he received a violent blow on the chest from the hand of Richard Ashton, which sent him reeling backwards and would have felled him to the ground if he had not been caught by some of the bystanders. The moment he recovered, Sir Thomas drew his sword and furiously assaulted young Ashton, who stood ready for him, and after the exchange of a few passes, from none of the bystanders dared to interfere, sent his sword whirling over their heads through the air. Bravo, dear, cried Nicholas, stepping up and clapping his cousin on the back. You have read him a good lesson and taught him that he cannot always insult folks with impunity. Ha ha ha, and he laughed loudly at the discomforting knight. He is an insolvent coward, said Richard Ashton. Give him his sword and let him come on again. No, said Nicholas. He has had enough this time, and if he has not, he must settle an account with me. Put up your blade, lad. I'll be revenged upon you both, said Sir Thomas, taking his sword, which had been brought him by a bystander, and stalking away. You leave us in mortal dread, doughty knight, cried Nicholas, shouting after him derisively. Ha ha ha. Richard Ashton's attention was suddenly turned in a different direction, for the music suddenly ceasing and the dancing stopped. He learnt that the May Queen had fainted, and presently afterwards the crowd opened to give passage to Robin Hood, who bore an inanimate form in his arms.